Hi, I'm Donna Jordan from Jordan Fabrics. Today I'm going to show you how to make a cozy quilt designs pattern. This is called X Factor. It has X's in each of the blocks. The blocks kind of make an X design. So we need to grab a jelly roll, and then we need to get some background fabrics and some border fabrics. Then we can get started. One of the nice things about cozy quilts patterns is they give you a whole bunch of different sizes. Now I'm going to do the throw, which takes 37 strips. That's great because most jelly rolls have 40 strips. This is the one I'm going to do today. It has really rich colors: rust, cream, black. Now we need to pick out some backgrounds and some sashing fabrics. The first thing I'm going to pick is the outside border. So I want something that's going to look good with this color group, and I think this speckly one would be perfect. It just picks up all the light and dark fabrics in there, but it's not too busy, so I think it'll make a great outside border. Now we need some background and sashing. So I'm going to use something plainer. This is our section of hand-painted batiks, but they don't have a lot of print on them, and I think this one would make really good sashing. It's a little bit lighter than this, but the fabrics will show up against it. Then I need a really light background, and I think that one will look really good. It's got just a little bit of pattern showing there, but I think all of these fabrics will show up against it because it's a little bit yellower than the backgrounds on these here. And those will all look really good surrounding these blocks. So let's take it over to the workroom and we'll get everything cut out and show you how to sew it up. I have all of the backgrounds, the borders, the sashing already cut out. Now you'll have to get the pattern to see what sizes they are. This is a pattern that we sell. This is one we buy from Cozy Quilt Designs. So I can't give you all of the measurements, but they have really, really easy instructions and I love their patterns. Now all we have to do is get our strips out and pick what's going to go where. This is probably the hardest part of the whole project, opening this up. Now we need 8 strips to go in these background pointy things. We need a total of 8 strips, and I'm going to pick darker ones for those. So I'm going to use the light ones in the patchwork parts, but I'm going to want to pick out 8 darker ones for around the edges. Here are the 8 strips that I've picked out to go in the pointed part. It's the part I'm pointing to right there in each square. These strips down here, these are all the strips that are going to make the bulk of the squares, what are called the X's. These 5 over here are what are going to be used in the little teeny squares. So we have a lot of little teeny single squares, and I wanted those a little bit darker and in a variety of colors. And then we have 3 strips left over. So I'm not going to use these because they blend in too much with the background, or in this case, I just don't like that print as well. So that's a good thing to do when you're planning out cutting your pattern, where you're going to put which strips, so that you can make the pattern look really, really good. Some patterns it doesn't matter and you can just pick them all up and mix them. But in this one, a little bit of planning ahead will make the quilt turn out a lot better. The first step we need to do is to mark the back of our background pieces. We need to mark half of them with a diagonal line going that way and half of them with a diagonal line going this way. Now there's a number of ways to do this. I like to use a pencil. So I'm just going to take this and I'm going to get my ruler, which has a 45-degree angle line drawn on it, and I'm going to line this up so that this line is along the top edge of the fabric and it's right in the corner there, and I'm just going to hold it and draw a little line. So do that with both stacks. Each block is going to have 4 of these units. So here's how you do this. You take the centerpiece and you take one of these and put it on this corner. So we're going to line up the edges and we're going to sew right along the line. Then we're going to open this up, iron it. I'm just going to finger press right now, but you'll need to take it over to the ironing board. And then we're going to trim this off, leaving a 1/4 inch. Now we're going to take the other piece here and we're going to put it in the corner and we're going to stitch that way. So I have to turn it upside down, make sure everything is lined up exact, and stitch right down that line. Then we'll iron it and trim off the excess there. But you can see we've got a nice point here, and the tip of it is a 1/4 inch from the edge. Now, I don't think I'll be making these individually. I'm going to chain piece the whole stack of them, but it's useful to see one step at a time so you know what you're going to make. So let's do this with all of the pointed pieces. Once you have all your pointed sections done, it's time to move on to the X part of the blocks. So these are made with strip units. So these are the 24 strips that we set aside. So we're going to take them 2 at a time and we're going to sew them side by side. So use a fairly small stitch length, right sides together, 1/4 inch seam, and just sew 2 together. And then you can leave them on the machine and pick up another 2 and sew those together. When you're all done, you can just pull it all back, and then we're going to finger press all these seams to one side. And once they're finger pressed, we're going to take them over to the ironing board and actually iron. So I favor pressing towards the dark side. So we'll just push this way, and you can use your fingernail, you can use your fingertip, but I'm kind of opening it up and I'm just pulling down the seam, and that way it'll lay nice and flat when we go to iron it. Now we need to iron the strip sets nice and flat. We've already finger pressed them, so the seam allowance is all going the same way. But I like to use the iron, and then once you've got it pretty flat, check it against a straight edge. I like to use this 4-foot yardstick, and then I know I've got it really nice and straight, and then you can steam it. Once you have them all ironed, you're going to take 2 sets and you are going to put them right sides together, and we're going to stitch along both edges to make a tube. Now, since the seam allowances are all going to the dark side, this one is going down and that one's going up, and so they're going to lay really flat when we sew this, and then we're going to cut this. Now both sides are stitched and it's a strip tube. So I am going to take it back over and just briefly iron the stitching so that this won't be distorted. Once in a while when you stitch, it'll stretch it a little bit, so I like to flatten it out with the iron, and then we're going to cut it. I'm going to use the strip tube ruler, the 4.5 inch line here on the stitching line. So we are going to line this up. And I like to hold it here and get another straight edge, move that out of the way, and make my cuts. Now we'll just slide this down, put the ruler back on, and make our second cut. So it looks like a little bit of extra moving, but it actually saves a lot of time. Once you get the first triangle cut, put your ruler again with the 4.5 inch line on the stitching. You can see it a little better there because the thread is in white. Hold the ruler, put another straight edge right up against it, move that out of the way, and make your cut. Now we're going to continue on for the whole strip, and even though they look like triangles because they were a tube, they're actually squares. Here is one whole strip cut, and you can see there's not very much scrap. There's not very much waste. It's pretty efficient. So now we have all of these squares, and we're going to iron them open with the seam allowance towards the dark side. You're also going to want to trim off the dog ears. I find it a little easier to trim them off after I iron, but if you prefer, you can just take your blade and make a quick snip right here and here while they're on the cutting board. Here's how I like to iron these. If you put the light fabric down and peel it open and press it a little bit with your fingers so that this doesn't get curved, then take your iron and give it a little steam. That way you'll have this nice and straight. So I find if I just press it open with the iron, it tends to get a curve in it. So kind of press it by hand first, then use the iron. You can get a little rhythm going and you get a little speed up. Next step, take 4 of your squares and lay them out like this so that we've got an X in the middle. And you should just pick 4 random ones. You can mess around with turning them upside down if you like, but you just always want to have that X in the middle. Then you take 4 of these guys that we made earlier. These are going to go on all 4 sides. And the last piece we need is these squares. And again, just pick 4 different colors and they're going to go in the corners. So I like to get a variety of colors for each block. Now all we have to do is stitch it up. We're going to sew these 4 pieces together first. So I am going to put that like that and that like that, and I'm going to stitch down here. You do need to match your intersections here, but the seam allowances are going different directions, so I can feel if they're matched. If you're not sure, you can stick a pin through there to see where they're going to come together. Make sure you've got them lined up. Now we're going to open this up, and I'm just going to gently finger press right here the seam to that side. And then for this one, I'm going to gently finger press the seam to this side. Now, I'm not going to finger press the whole thing because these are all bias edges and it'll stretch if I pull it there. So that's why I'm just going to press it a teeny bit so that the seams will lay flat. Then I can stitch the other direction. And we will press this seam to one side. It doesn't matter which way you press this seam. Now we do need to actually iron this, and you have to be a bit careful because it's all bias. Kind of move your iron along the seam grains, not back and forth and up and down this way, but along the diagonal edges, because then you won't be stretching and distorting it. Once you have it ironed nice and flat, just make a row here, a row here, a row here, and then stitch them all together. Here's the first block. They're really turning out nice. I love the way it looks like there's patchwork set on top of another block that's behind it. I'm going to be making 16 of these blocks, and once those are done, we're going to put the sashing and cornerstones between them all. The blocks are all stitched together now. They came together really easily. They're a lot of fun to make. I have a lot of them laid out over here, and this is what I picked for the sashing. But once all the blocks were done and laid out, this really looks way too red and it's just sticking out too much. So I decided to change to this more neutral color. This way the blocks are still showing really well, and this is not distracting from the blocks. So it's always a good idea to audition all your fabrics as you go, especially for something critical like sashing. So this is going to go around the outside, then we've got a border of this, and then we've got this nice outside border, and that pulls out the red very nicely. The finished quilt ended up 72 inches square. Really happy with how it turned out. The blocks are really highlighted with this background and this sashing color. And it looks like there's a patchwork block on top of another block turned. And you do get the nice X's in the middle of every block. It was not difficult to sew. It's actually very easy to do sashing when you put cornerstones in with it, because then you have a spot to stop and match to every time. I quilted this with a pattern called Echo of Light, and you can see these swirls, up and down swirls here. And I used the barn red on the back. Now you can really see the quilting. It's really a fun pattern. The Cozy Quilt Designs pattern gives you sizes from wall hanging all the way up to king size, so you can make a really big 100 by 100 inch quilt on here. And it doesn't take too much fabric to add in, so I used almost all 40 strips from the Sangria strip set, and then we used buttercream, toast, and the speckly print on the outside here. Really, really fun to make. Thanks for watching our tutorial today on how to make the X Factor quilt. We're going to be doing another giveaway. We're going to give away a kit to make a rail fence quilt. This is called Milk and Honey, and this is one that Matt pre-cuts here, and it's all made out of Ginny Buyer prints. So we are going to include the kit and some fabric so that you can put borders and binding on it. So we'll give a link down below that'll tell you exactly how to enter. Good luck.